monthly meeting of the Cook County Housing and Redevelopment Authority, Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. It is 3 o'clock, and so we're underway. First, I note the presence of a quorum. Commissioners Lamore, Olson, Hanson, O'Brien, and Gabler are all here. I also want to welcome the county commissioner designate to our sit-in on our meetings, Commissioner Gary Gamble and Sullivan. Commissioner Sullivan also is the alternate, so we appreciate your support and your being here. First item is approval of the agenda. Can we move to approve the agenda?
With one addition?
Addition to the agenda?
To be new business E, hiring recommendation.
With that amendment to the agenda, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
It's moved. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the agenda? If not, all say in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Approval of December 2024 meeting minutes is next on the agenda. Are there any comments or thoughts on the agenda, the approval of the
I move to approve.
Been moved. Any second?
Dies for lack of a second.
I'll second.
Commissioner O'Brien seconds. It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments on the meeting minutes of December 2024? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? New opportunity for public comment. There is no one present from the public, so we'll move on to new business. A, Resolution 25-1. Jason Hale, please lead us through that.
Happily. The first resolution of the year. This is a resolution approving terms and scope of services by Redpath & Company, LLC, to provide auditing services for the 2024 Housing and Redevelopment Authority of Cook County financials for a cost not to exceed $17,500. So commissioners are well aware, this is the firm that we have used for both the 2022 audit, which is very simple, and then this last year's audit. And they have again offered to do this for the HRA. We talked about it at the last meeting. They had sent us a letter of engagement to ask if we would again like to use their services for this following year. We know that 2024 is going to be slightly more complicated because we transitioned to our own accounting instead of the auditor, but the amount is approximately $3,000 less than last year's because they have an initial setup of startup fee. So we've already done that, and now we're in their system. And at the last month's board meeting, the board indicated you would like to proceed with Redpath. So this is just authorizing me to sign their letter of engagement, and then they'll start asking for documents, I'm sure.
And they are also the county's auditor and the EDA's auditor, so I think that's a good idea. Someone want to move Resolution 25-1?
Also move.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Brings us to B, EDA requests recommendation for one roof property in Lutzen.
Chair, at the December board meeting? November-December meeting, the EDA requested that the HRA would weigh in on this request from One Roof. And One Roof, I talked to them last night. They were anticipating coming to this meeting to answer any questions, but they thought it was next week. It so happens that our meeting, the first of the month, landed on a Wednesday, so we're earlier this month than the EDA. So I think we're all familiar with Four Directions dwellings in Lutzen. The One Roof owns a few more acres to north and east of that apartment complex, the 16 units. They acquired the site originally with the intent of doing potentially 2 phases. I think you have all heard some of the stories about it was more complicated than anticipated. And so they've been obviously owning and operating that site since, I think it's 2018. They do not plan to do any further housing development there. They are looking, and I'm talking with them about other opportunities in the county, but they would like the ability to sell that parcel. They cannot sell it yet because it is one large parcel connected to their existing site. And that whole parcel has covenants on what it has to be used for. And so their request is that the HRA would, their request to the EDA is to remove those covenants on the, let's say, the surplus parcel so that they can subdivide it to the county and then sell off the excess land for whomever. And so the EDA requested that the HRA weigh in, so to speak. And then whatever your weighing in looks like, I will send the director an email with your recommendation.
And that parcel was all acquired from Arrowhead Electric Co-op?
Correct.
And do they have a potential stake in the answer here as well, releasing some criteria that were in the whole parcel to begin with? And have we talked to them?
We haven't talked to them. The EDA and One Roof has talked to them, as I understand.
Okay.
Because they asked them if they wanted to acquire it back, and Arrowhead was not interested. There are also easements through that property from Arrowhead that Arrowhead still maintains, utility easements, which challenges a little bit the development of that additionally. So, as I understand it, the EDA does not want to acquire it. The Arrowhead doesn't want to acquire it, and the One Roof just wants the ability to list the property without those covenants, and that's what we're just giving our professional recommendation, I guess.
Is there any, is this parcel an important parcel for the development of housing, or is that just like any other part? Is there any reason to target that parcel for housing or not?
My opinion is if it wasn't One Roof doing it, I think it's unlikely, just because there's one access road that goes through 4 directions.
Mm-hmm.
And it would make a lot more sense if one owner-operator had both of those projects. I just don't think I've shopped it to a couple different folks
Mm-hmm.
as a potential, and they saw complications.
Okay, thanks.
So I think it's unlikely that it would be developed for another multifamily project like that if One Roof wasn't the developer.
What's the zoning, do you know by any chance? Could it, can it accommodate commercial use or other uses?
My recollection is it can accommodate other uses, but the covenant, well, right now the covenants don't allow it to be other uses, but, because it's in between multifamily and, institutional or utility use, and it's along the main corridor there, so, it can accommodate other things.
Any other questions or thoughts here?
So, just as a clarification, they're really looking for us to have no objection, basically?
I think they're looking for the board to say that you do or do not support removing the covenants from that portion of the property so that One Roof can subdivide.
Okay, I mean, the covenants are held by Arrowhead?
The covenants are on title.
Yeah.
And they were applied to the whole property when the property was provided to One Roof.
But as a negotiated by Arrowhead for the transfer of the property? I mean, that's how
I
it
don't know the
happened?
role Arrowhead, I think they just provided the property, I think they sold it, and maybe it was at a discount, but they
Yeah.
I don't think that had anything to do with the covenants, that was more of a negotiation with the EDA, and then also they had to apply for a grant, it was part of the grant application.
So it doesn't
Doesn't
trigger it paying back the grant and?
No, I don't think Arrowhead, for lack of a better phrase, has a dog in this fight, so to speak. I think that it's just property that they knew they weren't going to be using, they provided.
Well, I'll move we support EDA's request for our recommendation to allow the removal of those covenants and the sale of the land by One Roof.
So just in the interest of clarity, Commissioner, you move support to support One Roof's request to remove the covenants of the land?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Did I hear a second?
Yep.
Yes, O'Brien,
Any
second.
further questions or comments on the issue of the one roof property? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, down to C, 2025 regular board meeting schedule.
Chair, I attached to the agenda, you'll see I just put what seems like an intuitive addition to, or I should say schedule for 2025, based on our previous schedules.
Did we have to make adjustments for holidays like Thanksgiving and?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's the third Wednesday of every month, except for December, to accommodate the holiday season. And I actually think it worked out on that day, too.
Unless somebody's got an issue, I don't think we need an action on it. We'll just, that's what our schedule will be.
Okay.
All right, D, contractor for transition.
Chair, this was actually mentioned in our very recent special meeting. Former board chair, Mayor Somnus, had offered to fill a transitionary role. Of course, the board's going to contemplate in a moment here motion for hiring recommendation. It depends on when a candidate can start, obviously. Based on the conversations we've had with candidates, it sounds like it will be at least 2 weeks. So the question is, I would anticipate that the earliest the candidate would be able to start would be probably 3.5 weeks from now, give or take. So really what the board is, I want to make sure I told you I would put it on the agenda to discuss it today. Do you want to have somebody fill in for that, call it 2 weeks, maybe in February, or do you want to just let it ride until the new director starts?
I think you'd be the best judge of that. Can it ride?
I guess I'd say that it would take time it might take just as much time to get Mary Somnus up to speed as it would be to do that again with the next person. I suspect that, presuming the candidate the board selects can start, reasonably, the first half of February, I think you'll probably be fine.
Well, and you had mentioned the possibility that you might be available on an emergency consulting basis after
Yep.
February
Just don't
1st.
want any bills to be paid.
And I'm assuming that
Lights shut off.
that would be some kind of an hourly basis, and
Correct.
we should come up with a new agreement if that's going to be the case. And I think my guess is the commission would support that. And I think that's probably a better solution for this. So.
Well, and frankly, the board won't even know. Unless someone's checking, has the cell phone or is checking the HRA email, it won't be until the director starts. So, I of course encourage somebody if they want to take that. I think that this is always the challenge with such transitions. By the time that you would find out, what's the problem and who do I need to talk to, you'd get your arms around it, and then the new director would start. So, if there are things that come up, I'm happy to work with the board on some sort of arrangements to, even beyond, if the new director needs assistance or whatever, as we've talked about in the past, I'm happy to do that.
Well, if you draft up a potential agreement for that, then it'd be helpful.
And one other suggestion would be and you're probably already planning this, but just make sure that there's a automatic response in the email and an automatic response on the cell phone, explaining that that there's that they're not going to, folks are not going to get an immediate response to expect it. And we have a new executive director starting shortly.
We'll get back to you as soon as we can, as soon as they start. Yeah, I'll be doing that. Yep.
Any other thoughts on this subject? If not, we'll move on to added item E, the hiring recommendation.
All right, I would move that the board authorize the Personnel Committee to move ahead with the negotiation and an offer to one of the candidates pursuant to the successful gathering of references on all the candidates that we're considering and background check.
I'll second that.
Do you want to have that shared with the rest of the board? Once we've
Yeah, I mean,
completed
that's,
it?
I don't think that has to be in the motion, that's just what we're gonna do.
Okay.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further thoughts or comments about the hiring procedure here? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
I would say thank you to the Personnel Committee and to Jason for your hard work.
You're welcome.
And to the candidates.
Yeah. Other business, the director's report,
Yes,
Heights.
few things to go over. So, I believe in December I mentioned that the Heights asked the question, is there an ability for them to include units at 60% AMI? Inspired by our work with Gunflint View. So I've met multiple times with that team again, and they are actually interested in doing up to 9 units at that level. And what I basically mentioned to them was, and so I went with the board, I'm putting this on your radar, we didn't have enough time, by the time we sorted everything out, we couldn't get it published on the agenda in time. So their request is going to be to allocate, just like we are doing with the Heights, or I'm sorry, with Gunflint View, a fixed amount over a certain time horizon for up to 9 units. They want to do 9 units, is what they're asking. And so the amount, unless it changes by the time this will get approved, so it's based on the Minnesota Housing's publishing of the different AMI levels, which we've used many times in the past. The amount is $340 per month, so it would be a total of $4,080 per year. Per unit, correct, yep. So the grand total is $36,720 per year. That is all that is math. So this isn't, they're not making any more, it's basically just breaking even to allow 60% AMI units. And they're looking at doing a mix of different unit types. They have studios 1s and 2s. So the request is going to be for $36,720 a year for at least 5 years. Because when we talked about it in December, the board's position, and I agree, was we want to have stability for those tenants as long as possible. We want to rent them for a year and then they have to leave. With a couple of key caveats that I want to make sure to mention. One is they are planning, and we've talked about this, looking at the option for a second smaller building behind them. The developer of that is the same folks that are working with to build their building, and they're trying to build a 60 to 80% total building, so in that workforce range. If they do that, they want the ability to essentially transfer all of those tenants to that other building to make like an equal unit available to them, and then they would not continue, the HOA wouldn't continue to pay them for that. And I guess from my perspective, that's fine. That's a win. There's more units available for folks in that market. So that's the carve out there is if they're successful in building a second phase, that they'd have the ability to provide those tenants with the basically right of first refusal, the option to move into that neighboring building. Also, they want the ability, and I wanted the ability to make it more than 5 years if the HRA finds funding to do so. So this is subject, of course, to the big question. What I told them is it's all just funding. It's, if the HRA has the $36,720. We have approved in the 2025 budget $75,000 for development-related expenses. We also will have, just to remind the board, if we close on the Tofty property, which should be in the next 3 weeks, that will be $40,000, which is basically 1 year's worth, right? And then finally, the One Roof Community Housing's $250,000 repayment that we lent them. So we do have some resources, and of course, like I drafted for the Gunflint View project. Essentially, if the HRA doesn't pay, then they don't rent them at that level. So I guess I'm saying if the board feels like it's a good use of funds and, you know, that, hey, let's maximize the opportunity with a building that we know is being built to get some more modest rents, then I'd say there's not really the harm in doing it, because if you can't acquire the funding for future years, then terminates the agreement. So I want to put that fully on your radar again. We sorted it out Thursday last week. We couldn't get it on the agenda. But I want to answer any questions about that. They know that I was going to mention this and talk about it with the board.
And where are they in general on their start date?
I believe they're closing on financing tomorrow or in the next couple of days here. Once they do that, then they order the modules and then things get moving. So the goal is September 1st opening.
And as usual, when the Heights comes up, I'm publicly disclosing that I'm a limited shareholder in the Cook County Community Real Estate Fund.
I have the same recusal.
So the best procedure is don't vote on this
Yeah.
item?
We're not voting today, right?
Correct.
But when it comes up, yeah. But that's,
But you'll see it, and this is one of those, I think, one of those items that may, when I'm gone, that will be a little bit of a transitional bump. Just because, and we have some emails, and I asked Gary and I to, like, we captured it in bullet points. This is what the intent is for my, whoever precedes me. So, I just wanted to make sure that that is fully on your radar, so it's not weird when it comes up or unfamiliar. If you have any other questions, I just told them I would bring it up and make sure that I'm not way off base in this conversation.
No, quite the contrary. I think this is great, based on the popularity of the 60% units at Gunflint View. It's obviously the the hot market, and also does the most good for workforce housing. So,
Okay,
thank you and thank you to the Heights for.
absolutely.
Can you remind me the number of the 60% units at the Gunflint View?
11.
Okay.
Yep, 11 and 13, 60 and 80%. So this building would have 9 at 60% and then 9 at 80%.
Terrific.
and the potential for another building.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I may be trying to help them with that. We'll see.
First glimpse of your.
Yeah, I don't know.
Move on to item 2 in that range, financials.
Yes, they were attached. Any questions about any of those?
Straightforward.
I thought so.
Let me ask, did the county board approve the HRA's budget as submitted, or were there
As submitted.
alterations? Okay,
As submitted.
thanks. Then I feel a lot better. But thank you. Any other issues on the finance?
Not for me.
How about other topics? Item B.
I did have one thing to add to, under other topics. So I met with Commissioner Storley this morning. This is not a surprise to anyone. There's not a lot of senior housing in Cook County. And so she wanted to talk about that. And one of the things that she mentioned that I think is a good idea is that there are some of her colleagues and friends have had to leave the county, she said, because they wanted to sell their house and find something with no maintenance or less maintenance, more modest size, et cetera. A tale we've all heard, but they couldn't find an alternative. There wasn't anything available. And so the Homestead Cooperative, I'm sure you're all familiar, on 11th Avenue West, has done well and is popular, so to speak. And her question was, is there an ability to get to entice or to create another sort of senior cooperative building? She, of course, would love it on the West End. That is her district, but she recognizes Grand Marais is probably the more intuitive place for various reasons. So, as we were talking, I made it clear that, if it's for sale for 55 plus, often they're 62 plus, basically condominiums that are in a cooperative, so everybody owns the whole building. That's the difference, if you're not familiar with co-op models. It would likely have to be a, market project. There aren't a lot of resources unless it's I'll just say this, doing cooperative, affordable, for sale is very complicated, and the resources is kind of a square peg round hole situation. If it is a market rate driven one, which I think is still worthwhile to pursue because it frees up more single family houses in the community, where folks want to move in from the trail or Hoveland or wherever, and be in town. And what came to mind, it's funny, she was asking about properties that might be available, and the HRA's already got options or acquired some of those properties, so, for other projects. But one of them is the Cedar Grove property that we have an option on. Across from the law enforcement center, it's the southeasterly-most corner of Cedar Grove. So, on the west side of 7th. I think one of those parcels could make a really good spot for a potential senior cooperative, so.
The southerly one?
So I have been talking with a home builder about that site for about a year, but he has not been really responsive lately, so and we don't have any formal agreement, and I told him I'm leaving, so if you want to get something more intentional, let's do it soon, and I just haven't heard anything.
So is that the one split by the water course?
Correct.
So are you talking the northern or the?
Either one,
southern?
so that we have the option, we have the, right to purchase them for $1 at any time. We haven't done it only because as soon as we do that, then there are some stormwater requirements and some other things we have to do, and the ADA already has that in their sort of system. And we haven't had a project specifically to acquire it for.
Well, that was, it had been reserved for senior living.
Yep.
I forget, assisted living.
Assisted living, yeah.
Yeah, that whole lower portion.
Yeah, there's a company out of the Iron Range, or they had properties in Iron Range. There was that I can't remember the name of it, but they were going to build a similar model here. They didn't, in part because they wanted to sell that property in the Iron Range to get resources, and also hiring people to staff it was a real concern. The hospital's nursing home that doesn't have enough staff.
Because they don't have housing.
And on it goes,
Yes.
right?
And childcare.
And childcare. So I wanted to put that on your radar and see if the board would be interested in that. As I, ride off in the sunset here in a couple weeks, there are some folks in my network that I might be able to talk into taking a hard look at it.
The density of housing that's possible there is higher than anywhere else that we've got within our scopes right now, correct?
No, I mean, the density at Gunflint and the Heights is pretty high.
Okay.
So what do you mean by that, I suppose?
In the BDA.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so that property was rezoned R1, which means it would need a CUP from the city to do multifamily housing.
Yeah.
But the city had long talked about it for potential housing purposes. They approved the rezoning. The HRA has the right to buy it.
I agree with you. I think that's a logical spot to put this type of housing,
Yeah.
especially for senior.
Well, the key would be to find the right sponsor to develop the co-op housing. I forget the one that did the one over on the west end of the city, but in my career, I financed a number of senior co-ops, and they were unbelievably successful, but it took a pre-sale, and it took somebody putting money at risk to do the development side of it. And but if you can find that person, I mean, shoot, my wife and I looked at one that I had financed that actually paid off its mortgage loan now, which was 40 years, and there's a 20-year waiting list, depending on the unit you want it, and it was 200 units. It's called Beckettwood, and it's just remarkable. So I would really support our efforts here to try and find that.
200 units would do nicely.
I want to manage
I don't know about
expectations.
that, but, yeah.
So part of the reason,
That's,
Go ahead, Chair.
no, I'd be in full support of trying to find
knock
the
yourself
developer
out,
that
yeah.
would put something like that together. And it may be the same group is still around that did,
I don't think they are.
yeah.
I can't remember the specifics, but
I wanted to mention it for two reasons. One, of course, to get the pulse and make sure that's something that might be appropriate or a good fit. In particular, because if they're market rate, which most senior co-ops are, I just want to be realistic about the price point we're talking about, right? So we know that there are some, obviously, the mission of the HRA is to provide housing across all income spectrums of all types, and we haven't done co-op yet, so there's a new foray. But on the one hand, we're supporting Hamilton Habitat, which I'll get to in a second, and this is the other end of that spectrum of home ownership, right? But there may be some conversation or questions or pushback even from the city. I just want to be eyes wide open about that, because building a unit is probably going to be about $400,000 to $500,000 to construct it. So I just want to be realistic about that's what we're talking about. Again, even talking to Commissioner Storley this morning, she and like 3 friends, would love to buy a property like that, but can't because it doesn't exist. So there's a need for it. But if the board thinks, hey, that might be worth pursuing, I'll wrangle up some of the folks that I know who may be interested in taking a look at it.
That'd be great, I think.
promising.
Okay. Only other topic I had was just a quick update on Hamilton Habitat. Thank you, commissioners, for approving the conveyance to the HRA. The HRA will receive that property from the county just north of the community center and convey that presumably at your February meeting or whenever you're able to Hamilton Habitat. All the documentation is drafted for her for the HRA. And it just needs to be on an agenda, and we couldn't do it now because we didn't have the legal in time. So the HRA has to do a public hearing notice because we're disposing of public property to a private entity. So I think it's between, I think it's about a little over 3 acres. Most of it's wetlands. But the part that's not is where she intends on building up to 6 houses. And I think it's just for me, I feel great about it as an exit that we're able to help a local developer do affordable for-sale housing while we're watching an apartment 2 blocks away go up. I just think speaks to the opportunities. And so I appreciate the board's support on that. I know Anna really very much does. It gives her a pipeline for the next couple of years. So I wanted to celebrate that with you, say thank you, and then whomever is following will just need to get that on your agenda for approval and route it and such. Any questions about that project or initiative at all?
Just clarifying the location, is it right, looking above the community center, is it across from the horse park?
It's right there, yep.
Okay.
Directly east of that horse park.
Okay.
One last thing is just to say that we have submitted applications to IRRR for both Norskogan, as well as for the homestead lots that Hamilton Habitat owns for assistance for those lots. So you'll find out, hopefully February is the meeting plan, whether or not we got the funding for, I think it's $136,000 for Hamilton Habitat, and then $400,000 for Norskogan is the request.
And those applications are totally in and
They're
done, right?
Yep, they're in. Now it's just, they might, if they have follow-up questions, they'll find me, but.
Okay.
Good job, Jason.
Yeah, indeed.
That's all I had.
All your mopping is done?
Mopping?
Mop up.
Oh, I think there will be a trail for a little bit, I'm sure, but I'm happy to keep mopping.
Any committee reports? I think you know what the personnel committee's been doing, so we don't need to report on that, but we'll keep doing what we need to do, given the resolution that was approved today. I think.
I have a question just for if I send a draft or something for engagement for future, who would you like me to send that to? You?
Send it to me, and I'll share it with the finance committee.
Okay.
We'll go from there.
Okay.
Any other business?
Issue for board discussion. I don't know what this, in my head is, we're at a pretty important milestone of a really positive chapter of the HRA with Jason's departure. I think it would be worth thinking about whether there's some sort of a get-together to help Jason celebrate that, some sort of social get-together to help Jason celebrate that. That's about as far as I've gotten in my thinking, so I don't know if we want to just...
Well,
That's what
continue
this
those
is, right?
things. Continue along that
Torture him
line,
one last
yeah.
time?
Um,
I'm pretty sure you'd find decent attendance.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's certainly would support
we can do
that.
that informally.
Anybody else?
I have a
Any
report,
thoughts?
as sort of tangentially requested at the last meeting. I reached out to the Cook County Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, yes.
And regarding what I'm calling the workforce housing service fee, based on the example set by Cascade Vacation Rentals that already charges a transparent fee to their customers and then passes it through to us to the tune of nearly $40,000 a year. And so the effort is to kind of go out and sell that to more businesses in the county as a way to really make a direct contribution. It could be a very significant source of funding, of very flexible funding. So I was actually scheduled to go to the county board meeting, I think I think tomorrow, or not the county board, the chamber board, this week sometime. But in my efforts to do this, on Jason's advice, I recruited Claire Stoddard, who's a owner of Cascade Vacation Rentals and sits on the chamber board, to kind of take the lead on it. And so we developed a one-pager just for the board to see, and the ask to the board is to support Claire and I to kind of go around and try to recruit businesses. That was done before, and there were several large businesses that indicated that they'd like to do it, and then it just kind of never happened. So I think there's potential out there and it actually, the Cascade Vacation Rentals puts it on as part of their rental fee. And that's sort of looking at the big hotels and that kind of thing is the low-hanging fruit, I think, but actually it could be a fee on any services in Cook County. So I think we could develop it. And Cascade Vacation Rental does a 1% fee. It doesn't have to be 1%. It could be a quarter of a percent, or it could be 3%. It's totally up to the business, but it's voluntary in the sense that it's mandatory for the customers, but voluntary for the business to implement it. Although Cascade Vacation Rentals, their experience is they've never had anybody complain about it. In fact, the only feedback they've had has been positive. People saying, "Oh, this is a great idea. I'm so glad I can contribute this small amount." But they said if somebody really complained, they'd probably just waive it. So I mean, that's an option too. So it's very flexible. I think it's got real potential, and if we get the chamber and Visit Cook County behind it, approving it, I think it could be very helpful to us.
Well, thanks for your services.
Yeah.
Let's say it that way, because-
Claire couldn't make it to the meeting this week, so we're scheduled for the next chamber meeting, which is in March. So that's where it'll be brought up. So I just wanted to report on that, and then I did some work with the chamber executive director, Linda Jurek, about let me get the name right here, the State Housing Tax Credit, State Housing Tax Credit Program and Contribution Fund, which, as I read it, can direct funding people, individual donors can direct funding directly to an HRA or a project, an individual project. Has to be pre-approved. And it's not clear from their published data what's involved in that approval process yet. People are looking into that, and I'll continue to look into that until we get that hammered down. But I think that has huge potential. For instance, Hamilton Habitat, if you could donate, so the way the program works is you make a donation and you can take an 85% tax credit on your state income taxes. So say my state income taxes, say I pay, $50,000 a year in taxes, in my dreams, to the state. I could donate $50,000 and then basically I would have a premium of $7,500 that I paid. You know, I'd get it all back but $7,500, which I would do in a heartbeat to support housing, and I'm sure a lot of other people would, who actually do have $50,000 state tax bills. But I would gladly contribute all my state tax
I've-
liability to housing in Cook County if I could do it to a specific project or to the HRA.
I've heard the same thing from some other folks in
Yeah,
the county,
yeah.
that
I think there's huge
especially
potential.
specifically to Hamilton Habitat.
My hunch is that it's targeted at affordable housing at the lower end.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
It is, and there is some paperwork that needs to be done by the project
Right,
itself.
right.
And
They have to be pre-qualified.
yeah, they gotta get
Yeah.
pre-qualified, but once they've done that, it's a powerful fundraising
Yeah,
tool. And
yeah.
for the investor, it's different from being a limited partner and, you know, getting a share of depreciation and everything else. It's purely, you're not a limited partner, you're simply gonna get 85% of your donation,
Yeah.
which is what it is,
It's
back
strictly a
as
donation,
off your state income tax.
Yeah, with the history of giving philanthropy in Cook County,
Yeah.
where, you know, Cook County residents have proven track record of being extremely generous, and the need for housing, I think this has big potential, so. Working on that at the same time, and I was going to present both kind of to the chamber, just so they were aware of the other program, but decided to, for now, to leave the state housing tax credit program off until we have our arms around exactly how it works, and then I'll be more than happy to go back and present that to them, and any other group that wants to hear it.
Commissioner, both of those topics, I've been working with entities who reached out to do both of those things. One, the tax credit for Hamilton Habitat, specifically asking how, you know, if I gotta pay, if I'm gonna donate, I might as well donate to something that I think is a great cause, et cetera. And so I worked with them through the guidelines of that program and tried to provide, you know, basically technical assistance for Hamilton Habitat to work with them to like get pre-qualified, because every entity, that's a little bit of the, it's a little legwork up front.
Yeah.
But, so those wheels are a little bit in motion. And then also, the reason I'm sharing this just because this speaks to the community that is Cook County. There's a gentleman who's building a house in Lutzen, who doesn't even live here yet. But the house is for, I believe he's gonna use it for, lodging for short-term rental. And he reached out to me without knowing any of these efforts that we have about an ability to add some sort of fee to give to local housing. And so I gave him your contact, so he's got your email, because he wants to contribute, because he knows, I mean, he's building something new, and I think that's the great model. If you want to build something new and rent it out as a short-term rental, you're not taking from existing housing stock. I'd rather that happen. But he also, like, without being, you know, asked, reached out and said, I want to be a part of the solution. So that's a pretty good spirit that I haven't seen a lot of places.
Yeah, and kudos to Claire Stoddard she's very enthusiastic to kind of take the lead on this, so
Oh,
it's
great.
not really me asking, it's her asking, I'm just there to answer questions about how the HRA works.
That's right. We cannot ask for money, but we can
Yeah.
answer questions.
Right.
Any other topics that we're missing? If not, might there be a motion to adjourn?
I don't want to.
We have a motion
Long
not to
meeting.
adjourn.
Long meetings.
Buddy, you got to be able to hold out, though.
All right, I'll move to adjourn.
It's been moved, is it now going to be seconded? I'll second it. I can step down from the chair. Any discussion on adjournment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any comments from the county commissioners?
I would just say in my first opportunity to sit in, which was unique in the fact that there were interviews, I was certainly part of interviews with county administrator previously, but I appreciate listening to your questions, hearing your comments and observations, and as commissioners, as of course Commissioner Severson knows, and any other commissioner, we sit on multiple boards, and there are those boards that you look forward to going to because you believe that people are committed to the process, and they know best practices for the most part in following disciplines that lead to good outcomes. And so it's been enjoyable to listen, and certainly to meet Jason, who I've had conversations with and have come to appreciate just through those conversations who he is as an individual and his contributions to our community. And we hope moving forward that his mentorship and his groundwork here will set the stage for the future person to step in. So, thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
And thanks to Commissioner Sullivan for all the help on the coordination and the details of, and working with Allison on the stuff, because that's out of our pay grade here. Some of that.
Super
but
pleased with the result.
Yeah, got a good result, so thanks.
I did have a question on this 1% or whatever. That is there anything that's governed by state statute that defines what you can or cannot do in
Yes.
that regard?
Yes, but because this is not a tax, because it's voluntary,
Okay.
the businesses could, you could add it as an administrative fee. You have to disclose it, and there's some laws around what,
Yeah, there's a recent
how you
law
disclose.
Yeah,
Has
I'm
to be
sure there
disclosed
had to be
upfront.
something in that
Yeah.
regard, as
Yeah.
long as they're in compliant with that, and it's
Yeah. No,
and
that's
the resourcefulness of looking at options for a way to solve the problem,
Yeah.
that's applauded too, because you just have to think of those things,
Uh-huh.
Those are two
and
tools
that takes effort to do that,
Those are two tools that have a lot of potential, I think.
I
yeah.
think so too. Once people, well, it's like 1,000, right? You just get a little bit incrementally, and it
Yeah.
becomes a huge pot.
Yeah, yeah.
You understand
Well,
the history of
yeah.
that?
Pardon?
You understand the
What
history of
Cascade
that?
has done
Cascade.
already.
Yeah,
It's
proves the
fantastic.
concept, which is why it's so
Yeah,
great to
no,
have
amazing.
Claire.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
understand
Yeah.
that,
You can
just
say, hey, we've been
anything that
doing
you
it.
do,
Look at this,
and
20
you can
grand or
have
whatever, right?
good
Yeah.
intention, and you
Totally.
find out, oh my
Has
goodness,
she been
there's a
active in
state
the
statute or
chamber?
something
No,
that
no.
prevents that from